Since the weather had cleared up nicely, it was time to move on to our next camping spot. We planned to spend a couple of nights at Baladjie Rock, and along the way to check out Weira Reserve, as that's another possible overnight stop. We headed east on the Bullfinch Road, and it wasn't long before we found the sign pointing to Weira. The reserve is just 13 kilometres from Mukinbudin. As you turn off the bitumen, there's a fairly large rest area and a track leading down to the day use area and campsite. Facilities include seats, tables, fire pits, and there's a long drop toilet at the end of the campsite. A walk trail leads to a namma hole, and there's probably enough room for 3 or 4 caravans to fit in quite comfortably, perhaps if they stray a little bit into the day use area. The granite breakaway rock formation is interesting, and rumour has it that orchids can be found near the namma hole. If the campsite at the reserve happens to be full, there's always the rest area as an alternative. The road isn't busy, so noise shouldn't be a problem here. Before long, we were back on the road, heading for our intended campsite. We passed Warrachuppin Rock and stopped to take some photos. This is a day use area, and it's situated next to a salt lake. The lake was pretty dry when we were passing. Finally, we reached the turn-off to Baladjie Rock. The track to the campsite can get a bit chopped up and slippery after sustained rain, but on this occasion it was flat and firm. There are 2 main campsites, with the first being reached as you drive into the rock. There's plenty of room here, and most people will find a spot easily. The other campsite is around the other side of the rock, and you follow a track to a large open area with an interesting rock formation. This was where we decided to set up camp. Well, we've come along from Mukinbudin today, not many stops along the way. One small campsite and one fairly minor attraction, one of the rocks along the side of the road, which, well, it wasn't that interesting. But now we're set up at Baladjie Rock. That's not far from Bullfinch, and a little bit south of there is Southern Cross, so those are the places we'll be heading after we finished here. We're not sure if we'll be here 1 or 2 nights yet. I've pretty much done a full setup, although I haven't set up the ARB annex. We've just got an open kitchen, which is fine as long as it doesn't rain. I have put a side shelter up there and the dunny blocks the other side, so just in case we get a little bit of rain, I don't think we will, but that's set up nicely for that. Right behind me here is this rather impressive rock. Some interesting rock formation up there where it's tumbled away over time, and this will be an interesting place to just have a wander around and explore. Quite a few tracks around here. Got another little trailer just in the corner there, but far enough away from each other. The only thing that worries me when I come to places like this is getting half a dozen caravanners who know each other come in here and make noise. That's tends to be one of the hazards of trying to camp by yourself when you come to these places. There's always the risk that you're going to get a big group coming on top of you and make a whole bunch of noise, which ruins the experience. But if we're going to do this, we have to put up with that from time to time. Most of the time it's not too bad. It's Wednesday night tonight, so I'm not expecting any real large numbers of people coming in. A lot of people have gone to Mukinbudin to celebrate the 100th anniversary up there, so that's probably going to draw a lot of the crowds away. Got quite chilly last night, so I think it was down to about 5 degrees in the morning. So decided tonight we're going to crank the charcoal fire up. Not a wood fire, just going to use the charcoal. Bit of a waste if we're not cooking, but It works really well to heat up the campsite and just give us a little bit of warmth when we're sitting out and enjoying the evening air. So for those who haven't seen them yet, these little things here are homemade firelighters, and what I do with these, keep them in a little container like this, a Christmas-like container. Looks like something you might want to munch on if you happen to be a beaver, I suppose. I make these up at home. It's just the little cake cases into which I put some chopped up apple wood. We've got apple trees at home, so I put that through the mulcher, keep a big container of it, and then I melt wax. Just the little tea light candles, melt those up and pour those on top, let them set, and they make absolutely brilliant firelighters. And the good thing about them is you're burning wood and a virtually tasteless wax. You're not using that awful rubbish that they sell in the supermarkets in the form of firelighters that stink to high heaven, and if you use them too early and if you don't let them burn out, they make your food taste like crap too. So I just keep a few of these. I make a few of these up before I come on a trip. When you're in a hurry and you don't want to wait for hours for your wood to burn down into nice charcoal, it's always good to carry some prepared charcoal with you and chuck it into a heat bead chimney, and within, I don't know, 20-30 minutes you've got your charcoal all ready to go, and chuck it into your fire pit and you can start cooking straight away. So always a good idea to carry some of this around with you, and also it means you're not picking up natural wood from the environment and taking away a resource that's sometimes needed by native animals. So good for all the right reasons, I guess.
Steak without putting any oil. So we have this and pumpkin as well, right? Before we can get going this morning, we're waiting for the canvas awnings to dry out. I want to get them nice and dry because we've got a couple of nights in a cabin coming up. I thought I'd go through some of the stuff that we've been using, some of the stuff you may have seen on the channel before, and just update you on the performance. And we'll also have a quick look at a couple of little changes to the trailer, a change I want to make to the trailer, and stuff that may not have actually lived up to expectations. So let's start off with the back of the trailer. Now, just in behind the annex here, you can see I've installed a water filler. That's just to make life a bit easier when we're putting water into the tanks, because we've got two 43 litre tanks in the trailer, and that's just simply plumbed in. Unfortunately, it does stick out a little bit. How they fit these things in caravans when they're that obtrusive, I'm not quite sure, but what we've done, we've put the gas cylinder there to help protect it, and it's strapped in, and that just runs into the tanks, which are then connected to each other. So that's the first mod that we've done to the trailer recently. The other thing I want to do, as you can see, the top shelf up there is too small. I just can't fit the gear on it that I need, so that needs to be extended out this way. And then once I've done that, I'll probably bring it level to the same as the bottom shelf, and once that's done I'll put a net across the front, because we get things falling out of the bottom shelf. They just don't stay there, there's nothing really to hold them in. I did try putting a couple of straps across the top there, hasn't been the most brilliant success in the world. Some things do come through there occasionally. Again, a net would have probably been a better choice. So that area of the trailer needs some modifications, and probably get around to that in the next few weeks, I would imagine. The other thing I think I need to modify is this rather, well, it's not a messy board, power board, but these switches are exposed and they can accidentally get turned on. So I'll need to put some sort of surround around that just to protect those switches, because yeah, they do stick out a little bit and they can just accidentally get turned on, and of course if I don't spot that, it's going to drain the battery. The other change has been getting a mounting plate for the Joolca hot tap. Now I've found it's a little bit touchy about turning on and off. The water flow to the unit has to be really good. If it's restricted in any way, the electrics won't turn on at all, and very difficult to get hot water out of it. Also finding that the flow rate, even if you turn it right down, is a little bit too high. I suppose they have to have a flow rate suitable for the unit so it doesn't overheat, but just find it does waste a little bit of water. But that's just something we'll have to live with, I guess. A brand new addition to the camping kit is this nice big Rhino box, heavy duty, and we're using it for keeping our dry food. So all the gear that we want to keep, even fruit and veggies, fresh fruit and veggies, nuts, spare milk, some bickies, what do we got down there, some broad beans, usually when that's full, all sorts of dry food, tin food, cans of stuff, even bottles of booze, that all goes in there. And we're finding that temperature wise it's keeping things quite cool, even though it's not the hot time of year. There is a bit of insulation there, it does help preserve the food a little bit better, I think. Nice big metal catches on it, and it just fits. And as you can see, when I want to open it, because we've got this top storage area in the car, it doesn't go all the way back. Thankfully they built a lid that does go further back and won't close on your fingers all the time. But in this case, the gear at the top there, which is towels and coats and hats and whatnot, helps keep the lid up when I want to get something out. Now just below that you can see the water bladder in the 4x4. I'm still debating whether it would have been better to get a solid tank to put in, but so far I guess this has been okay. I think I screwed up this time and I put water in it from the wrong hose, because this time there's a bit of taste to it. So we're actually using this water, which would normally be for drinking, for showering. And the connections go through to the back of the car where I've got an on-demand pump, and that's how we access water from the 4x4, because if we're off on our own without the trailer, then we've still got the ability to carry a reasonable amount of water. 40 litres is not too bad. Another thing to mention from an earlier video is this little Coleman instant pop-up tent. It's been very, very easy to use. We find that the condensation in it is pretty bad. It gets wet pretty much every day, so we've got to wait for it to dry out. But it has been nice to sleep in. You can see my sleeping gear is packed up in there at the moment. Let's see if we can get that out of the way. So you can see the folding foam mattress there. We've got a self-inflating mattress here that goes on top of it, and a double sleeping bag, so that's what I use for sleeping. And so far so good with the little tent. It's reasonably easy to fold up. Only took 2 attempts yesterday. But overall, very useful bit of kit. It doesn't take up much room, and of course when it's unfolded it's not a bad sized tent. Definitely better than a swag. The other thing I was going to mention was this new microphone system, and one of the things I find quite different to the old system, which is just the old Rode Video Micro, is the fact that because these are powered mics, you've got to remember to turn them on. So you've got to put receiver on and transmitters on if you're going to use both of them. Of course that's just hooked into the little adapter on top of the camera at the moment. I do that more to keep them handy and know where everything is, because they're quite small, would be quite easy to lose those. So I keep them like that, so that when I'm filming I know exactly where they are at all times. But yeah, I'm finding that's a bit of a mental thing. You've got to remember to turn your mics on, or you're not going to get any sound at all to the camera. So just a bit of a change in the mental process from using the Rode Video Micro, which is instant on. Oh, and the other thing I should mention about this camera, that stupid door that covered the cold shoe on top that I said was going to break and fall off, broke and fell off. Got the little King's thermometer here, which we've got the sender in the fridge, so we can keep a track very easily of what the temperature is. That's in the top part of the fridge, not the freezer, so it's showing the fridge temperature. And so far so good. We've been running quite well with that. You can see the outside temperature at the moment, 11.3. I think it's possibly a little bit warmer than that outside the car. The car's a bit colder. 3 degrees, 3.1 degrees in the fridge. That's good. And these little things, they're 20 bucks. They work. Even though it's a King's product and electronic, it does seem to be okay. Unlike their solar panel. And now that's something I'm going to have a little word about now. Now, we did have 2 solar blankets. Now we only have 1. The reason for that is the 200 watt King solar panel we had is pure and utter crap. Absolute rubbish. I don't know why they even bothered to build them. We had hardly made any use of it. It completely stopped putting power out. I had a search around on YouTube, and I can see other people have suffered exactly the same problem with that particular model of solar panel. This is the Allspark. It's a 130 watt, and this has performed flawlessly, despite the fact that you can see I've managed to scratch a couple of the panels there. Unfortunately, you've got to remember to wipe these down before you put them away, because if there's any kind of grip on the surface when they're being transported, it'll just rub. But even so, that's hardly made any difference to the output of the power from this thing. It's worked perfectly from the day we bought it, and it's I don't know, probably 2-3 years old now, and we've made a lot of use of that. Even in the coaster, we stick that out on top of the trailer or somewhere else just to give ourselves extra power. But the little Allspark is nicely designed, it's robust, it's got good eyes on it. You can see the little eye there on the end for hanging it up, and it comes with legs. So even though you've got to be a little bit careful in the wind because the wind will knock it over, other than that, it's been a brilliant little panel, so very, very happy with that one. One of the most useful things we bring with us on these trips are these little power packs for recharging all sorts of things. Really great when you just need to do it on the run, but these days there's a better alternative to these old-fashioned ones, and that's these fellas with a solar panel on top. And what I do with this is I use this to recharge this. When these eventually die, they'll all be replaced with this style, because this is obviously going to be the way to go. You can just chuck it somewhere in the sun. Don't put it anywhere too hot. Batteries don't like being too hot, but just keep sunlight on it and keep it relatively cool. This one, bit gimmicky, Uniden. Uniden's a good brand, good enough, but a little bit gimmicky. Got the compass on the back of it and 2 lights and things like that, but I don't really give a stuff about any of that. What I want it for is the power, not a big power bank. I've got a much bigger one than this, very heavy, about twice the weight, But this is great for recharging these ones, and of course you can recharge your phone and everything else from it as well. So we've had these for years now, and they seem to work pretty well. Got one I bought, oh god, I have no idea how long ago, in Malaysia, and still working very well. So these don't seem to fall over all that quickly. I suppose as long as you keep them relatively cool, don't let them get in the sun too much. But yeah, just something to mention along the way as part of the kit, that we use when we're out filming, and yeah, very useful. And while I'm talking about gear that I like and gear that I don't like, we've had this in the kit for some time. I actually picked it up cheap in an op shop, and yes, it does the job. It's a lighter for charcoal, but that's heavy. It's very heavy. It's very badly balanced. It doesn't like to stand up like that. It wants to fall towards the handle all the time, and it takes up a lot of room. So I've seen online some folding versions of this, so I think we might retire this one to the house, and for the next trip we'll get a folding version that will not weigh as much as that, hopefully, because this thing weighs a ton, and won't take up as much room. Now, while we've got the camera pointed at the cooker there, here's another little thing that we use more and more often. We've retired the old metal kettles, and we've now got one of these folding silicone ones, $3 from an op shop. And yeah, anybody who follows the channel will know that we keep our eyes open in op shops and pick up all sorts of bargains, and this has been good. Works really well. A little bit getting used to how it pours, because the silicone is soft, so when you tip it and pour it, it feels like it's going to collapse, but it doesn't. So that's another addition. That just goes flat and goes in the back drawer of the 4x4. So no more having to worry about where to put a big metal kettle. They're a bit of a nuisance. Again, too bulky. They don't weigh much, but it's hard to find places to put them. And as you can see, folding silicone items are not limited to the kettle. We've got a wash-up basin there. Again, I picked that up at op shop for, I think, $2-3 again. And yet more folding things. When that's not got food in it, being stored in the fridge, folds up flat and easy to pack. We just chuck that in a rack in the back of the trailer, and I've got, I don't know, half a dozen of these things now, varying sizes. These we picked up at Aldi. They weren't terribly cheap. I think they're about $15 a set, something like that, but very useful. And of course you can use them in microwaves, put them in the freezer, or in the fridge as we've got it now. So this is the way to go for gear that you want to save space with. I often wonder when I'm packing up and getting ready for a trip whether we take too much gear, and yeah, I suppose we do. I mean, we do have luxuries like the hot water heater in there, and yeah, all sorts of bits and pieces that I think we might need, but it's hard to work out what we don't need. When that trailer is packed, it's practically full, and if I remember, I will take a shot of it once we pack up here tomorrow morning, and you'll get some idea of what I'm talking about. It's a pretty decent sized trailer, but we managed to fill that mostly with light things, I've got to admit. The 2 foam beds we've started using there take up a lot of room, and they do fit in here, which is great. But yeah, other mattresses, although you can see up the top there, we've got more of the self-inflating mattresses. We don't need as many of those. We've got 3. I think we can cut that down to 1. So a couple of those will come out and go into storage. Storage meaning stuck in the garden shed somewhere, I expect. But there isn't really much that I think we can do without and still be happy. And I think that's what makes camping attractive, is you've got to be happy with what you're doing and the gear you're using. If you're not, why go camping? if you're uncomfortable and you don't like what you're doing, there's not much point in doing it. So yeah, we've got to carry so we do carry quite a bit of gear to enable ourselves to be comfortable enough, and 60 plus now, so we're not, as we were in our 20s, sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag and not worrying too much about anything else. You do need more gear as you get older, I find. We do have a King's drop down fold out shower tent. We're not really making much use of that. I sort of put it there more because it fitted in that space. We might use it one day. We have used it once, but we're still at the moment really sticking with the old style pop-up tent, which you'll see come into shot now, mainly because it's so easy to use, doesn't take up a lot of room. Admittedly, it takes up more room than the King's or the little drop down shower tents do, but we still find that very comfortable and easy to use, whereas these ones, once they're folded out, open top, open bottom, wind coming through, mosquitoes getting in, so that's only there as a standby if we want to use something really quickly and then move on without having to set up a proper shower tent. Now you'll know if you watch the channel that we've got one of these Aldi awnings. This is not an Aldi one, this is one of the King's ones that I put on the trailer. We put 1 inch each side of the trailer, and look at that. How much money do you think they save by making that so short? Couldn't they have just brought the end of that out level with here, so it would hold much better in the wind? And what we find, the wind pulls it up and down, up and down, up and down, and eventually it lets go. And there's nothing much you can do about that, unless I actually go to the trouble of attaching another piece of Velcro. It's going to keep happening. Whereas the Aldi one, you can hear it. I think you can hear it in the wind now. They let go. Yep, there you go. Just over there, on cue, bit of wind coming in. Aha, perfect. That's absolutely a perfect example of what these things do. I was looking at it this morning and I went, didn't we fasten that? No, we did fasten it, and they let go because they're too cheap to put a decent length of Velcro on there so that they hold on to each other. All that needs is what? Another 2 inches of Velcro on each one? How much money are they saving by doing that? They're bloody idiots. I mean, I don't hate their gear, we use some of it and we like some of it, but just this penny pinching bullshit that they do. They don't have to do that. Even if they added $2 or $3 to the price of the bloody thing, putting proper ends on these Velcro straps would make a big difference. So that's a bit of a complaint about the awning. Other than that, it's been okay, I've got to admit. We've been using it for a little while. It hasn't seen a massive amount of use, but it's been okay so far. So I'm not going to run down King's just because they're cheap, but when they do silly things like that, they need to fix it. That's just a usability issue. The wind just came on at the perfect time then and pulled that apart. And that's what it does all the time with these. They need to stay attached to the bar. It's, sort of important, because once the wind gets under it and flaps it up and down, it can be a real nuisance, and it'll probably damage it as well. But anyway, I have a lot of products I like, a lot of products I don't like, a lot of products I don't mind but have issues like this one. So just letting you guys know one of the things that we found that's a bit of an issue with it. Now, continuing on with our little rundown of products I like and products I don't like. This little Triton cooker from Coleman. You'll see a full rundown of it in another video that we've done. I'll put a link to it down below. Just one real complaint about it, and that's the fact that they don't have rubber feet on the bottom. And when you put it on a camping table like this, they slide around. As you can see underneath this one, I've had to put some anti-slip matting. Otherwise that would skate around the top of the table. So Coleman, anybody from Coleman ever listens to this, and I doubt they will, but still, put rubber feet on the bottom of your cookers. it really makes a big difference. And can you imagine these things sliding around with a pot full of hot fat on top, and that going all over a kid or something like that? You know, a very simple, cheap fix that would make it a lot more convenient and a lot safer. Other than that, I found it's a very good little cooker. The flames are easily adjustable, and I like it. So again, just one little thing. A lot of products are spoilt because the designers don't use them themselves, so they don't think about things that are really necessary on their products. All designers should be made to use the products they design before they go into production, and they'd work these things out. Now what I want to do, and what I haven't done yet, is just get some rubber feet for it and stick them on the bottom. Then I don't have to worry about taking the anti-slip matting everywhere. But yeah, okay, my bad, I haven't got around to doing that yet, but I do have the anti-slip matting, so that has alleviated the problem.